All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our property management webinar, Top Things to Know in Reducing Risk when Working with Residential Leases. My name is Teresa Murphy, and I'll be facilitating the webinar today. Before I introduce your speakers, I would like to remind everyone to put your questions in the chat throughout the afternoon. You can choose for the questions to go to everyone or just the panelists, but all questions will be fielded and addressed as time permits. And since I know you will ask, this and all the upcoming webinars that we host will be recorded and available later online on the HAR TV YouTube channel at har.com/HARTV. I will also be emailing out the recording to everyone on the webinar today. Now let's get started. Today we have exceptional subject matter experts leading you through our program. We have Paula Cleveland, broker with Keystone Properties, and J. Mac Sanders with Real Property Management Republic. Thank you again for joining us today, and I will pass the platform over to Paula and J. Mac.
Hey, thank you so much, Teresa. We've really actually been very excited to be able to get to this point today because we find that in our world of real estate every single day, a lot of the subjects come up over and over and over. And we're super excited to start sharing some things with everybody. J-Mac? You're on mute.
Step number one in Zoom, turn mute off when you're talking as a panelist. Thanks for being here, guys. Right now we got 65 people on. I think more are going to show up as time permits. Got a couple of questions. We want to know our audience. Some questions you guys may have later on, but we're going to send out a poll real quick. Two different polls. One is, are you a leasing agent? Are you a property manager? Do you do both, or do you do neither? You're just here for the education and want to learn the process and learn a little bit more. This is the great way to do it. And then there'll be a poll that comes out for that, so everybody can answer. And then we're going to have, if you're a leasing agent, how many leases have you done in the last year? You know, we want to know, are we working with brand new and what to expect and how to be able to help. So, and then as you have questions, what brought you to the webinar? Is it just education? Is it a specific question you wanted to be able to try and find an answer to that we want to be able to answer? Or if we don't know, direct you where to go. Sometimes we don't have the answers and we call each other and say, hey, have you done this before? Does this happen? So shoot that question out in the chat and we'll deal with those and work with them a little bit later. So go ahead and take a vote and we'll jump into the slides here in just a second.
We've got about 80% voted, so we're still waiting on a few more, and then we'll show the results. All right, I'm going to go ahead, share the results. Okay.
Cool.
Pretty even mix.
Yeah.
It's good.
We'll go to the next one. About 75% voted, so I'll give it one more minute and then we'll go ahead and show the results. right. That's what we're looking at today.
Awesome.
That's good information. That's really helpful. So we know who we're talking to today. Great. And so if you didn't put it in the chat, and I did see a lot of people say they're just here to keep growing, keep learning. Excellent, excellent. So JMac, tell us what the big differences are in leasing and property management.
Absolutely. So lease listing is very different than property management. The biggest one being the written property management agreement, where you're acting as the manager for the landlord and for the owner of the property. You're allowed as a property manager to have to take money in on behalf of your client. You have to have a license to do that. That's a distinction between property management that didn't used to be the case. That's now a law. Leasing agents help give their clients, whether they're buying or they're helping their tenants, their clients are the tenants that are looking to move in somewhere, help them find the property, navigate the lease agreement, go through the process and steps of tenant selection criteria. What are they looking for? Do we qualify for this property? What is their rent? How do they come up with these different criteria, and what are they? Communicate to the applicants and the tenant representatives the landlord's decision. You don't make the decision, the landlord does. That's another big difference between the property management. If you're going to do property management, you need to have broker approval. It's a very specialized part of residential real estate, and this class is about residential. There's a whole other aspect of property management and leasing that is commercial based, and we're not going to really touch any of that today. So if you have those questions, there are other classes. I've taken them. They're awesome. But yeah, the biggest difference is the written property management agreement, where you are acting as a fiduciary on behalf of the landlord and the owner of the property. Whereas a leasing agent, you're the conduit of information and to be able to set expectations and guide the owner as they have questions. Don't make the decisions for them. And then Paul is going to start to share with us about some of the leasing risks and what's next.
Thanks, J Mac. I didn't mean to push that button. I was just trying to unmute myself. So some of the things that you touched on, very important, is once you get past leasing, property management, if you're in that role, takes on a whole different dynamic. It's very broad, and the risk grow even bigger. So as we talk about risk, these are the things that we see a lot in leasing today. It really starts at the very beginning. Requesting personal information, credit reports directly from an applicant or a tenant rep. So as a listing agent for leases, the dynamic as it relates to applications is just broad, right? So we run risk for as agents and for our brokerages if we don't know what our brokerage policies are. So make sure you know what your brokerage policy is, and follow that very clearly. Wire fraud and identity theft is just at an all-time high. I don't think it's going away anytime soon. And so the great thing is Texas Realtors has promoted for a very long time My Smart Move, which I think is now changed to Smart Move. On the just the leasing side, if you have no other vehicle, this is a great vehicle. It's a TransUnion setup. It opportunity to give your owners the opportunity to see residential scores, like how somebody scores or an applicant scores on both credit and behavioral patterns of payments, as well as criminal reports. There's also a costed level up of this program. It's through Texas Realtors. You can learn all about that by going there, doing a little training class yourself on it, learning a little bit about it, and just attaching that to your landlord, giving that info. Have your landlord set it up. It goes, the lease application then would be done completely online. It takes its payments, it takes all that private information itself, and it sends it directly onto the landlord. That reduces your risk greatly. I've seen many, many times where an agent will ask for the identification, this copy of the Social Security card, as well as a credit report. We can't do that. You can't do that. You can't ask somebody directly for a credit report. I mean, I guess you can, and they could give it to you, but the risk is really great. So I want to talk to you about not doing that in the future. Find out what your brokerage policy is. Learn more about a better way of doing it right now, and just change that process. And if you see an agent ask you for that, if you're representing a tenant, ask them what the security opportunities are to do it a little bit different if there is one. I know it's a real challenging world because everybody kind of has a different process. On the property management side, we have much bigger programs that are a lot more in depth, still very, very similar. We don't want to have all that stuff in our possession. We don't want to see it. We don't file it. We don't hoard it. We don't keep it. It goes through an online process completely. We do get all the information, and then we're able to screen appropriately for the types of things that we need to. Also, when it comes to leasing risk, if you're the listing agent, actually even in property management, you really need to be careful. Listing for sure. You should not be approving or denying applicants for the landlord. That's really their job, their responsibility. They should be choosing their own tenants based on the information they receive through the screening process. Also, when you're completing the lease agreement, make sure your landlord is giving you input. If you have new landlords or even people that don't have a lot of properties that you're working with, they may not have seen all the 18 pages of just the lease agreement, as well as all the changes that were just made this year, and the addenda that are really important that goes with that. So you need to help them. You need to be an advocate for them, but you don't need to make the directive decisions about approving or denying. That should come directly from landlord. And take copious notes. Make sure you document when you talk to the landlord what the decision was. If you can get it in an email, great. You've got the paper trail. If you're not, making sure you're putting the notes down, and maybe send the email back. Thank you for approving that applicant. I'll make sure that it gets taken care of. We're moving forward. I'll get the appropriate documents out, and we'll start working on the lease. Be a good communicator. Know that there is a lot of stuff that's governing the choices of what you can deny on and what you can't. Fair housing is huge. Animal regulations have changed over the last few years. We have assistant animals. There's no longer service animals versus emotional support. There's one umbrella. There's a lot to know about that. If you don't know about that, make sure you get very well acquainted. There's also a form that Texas Realtors has provided for us to give to our owners during the listing process that explains more to them about that, so they're clear about that. There's lots of insurance guidelines that relates to the owner and their property, liability, that kind of thing, as well as renter's insurance. There are some requirements, then there's also some options. Setting deposits and fees in the agreements. I say go ahead and talk to your owner about the lease agreement. Let them know what's in the lease agreement. Gosh, it's 18 plus pages now, plus the addenda, plus other things. So those are big key things to keeping your risk lower. Texas Property Code, if your landlord doesn't know Texas Property Code, remind them that Texas Chapter 92 and 95 deal directly with residential leasing. And they're huge portions of the property code that help your landlord understand what their responsibilities are. I would say that writing things in special provisions, even in a lease agreement, need to come directly from the landlord. Sometimes landlords will hinder themselves because they already have in the lease agreement some pretty big latitude about what they're able to do as far as showing up at the property, giving notices to tenants, that kind of thing. But if they don't know the lease agreement and you're just filling it out for them and hoping that it's good, that's not a good thing. They need to know what's in that lease agreement, especially if you're helping them fill that out and they're using the Texas Realtor forms. Be careful that you're not duplicating things that are already in the agreement and then you're shortening or removing some of their abilities. Sometimes we see that and it's not a good thing. J-Matt?
So another big difference in leasing and property management is handling of funds. As a leasing agent, you really don't want to do a lot of handling of funds. you're okay to take a check and hand it to your landlord. But at the end of the day, the only payment you're realistically probably going to receive is the deposit once the lease is signed and you receive that deposit. The first rent check needs to go to the landlord if you're not managing the property. And that's a very important process. A lot of times people want to Venmo or Zelle or PayPal or wire funds. You can use them, but at the end of the day, a paper trail is important. A paper check goes a long way. You can make a copy of it. You can take a picture of it. You can show the trail. And that's important. You know, you can't close a real estate transaction without seeing something from a title company or a lender at the bottom about wire fraud and having a separate password for this and a separate login for that, just to be able to look at a survey or go over a title commitment. Those things are out there. People are targeting property management and leasing situations. It's all over the place. So when you've got funds, if you're a property manager, don't commingle them. Don't be like, hey, I'll take the check. I'll write you another check. My rent's late on my house, or I got to make a car payment. Don't commingle. You know, only do it the right way. If you have questions, ask your broker. If you're unsure, look at the lease agreement. If you're unsure, look at the lease listing agreement. A lot of times the answers are in the actual contracts and forms that we work with. So if you have any questions about those, let us know, and we'll kind of look at them. And Paul's going to continue to share with us a little bit about some of the leasing risks and communication and knowledge and understanding of the contracts and addenda. So the leasing forms are in zip forms. We just had a massive amount of changes that just set up in if you use zip forms, those changes have already been done to your forms. If you haven't used them lately, then you don't know they're there. But if you use them pretty routinely, you've noticed some of these changes as you're looking at them. The big one that's going to be obvious to a lot of people is the pet agreement is no longer called a pet agreement. It's an animal agreement, and it encompasses service animals, assistance animals, as well as family household animals that are not regulated by service agreements or assistance agreements. You've got the lease agreement, the updates, the changes, the lead-based paint addendum. You know, if the house is before 1978, it's the same whether it's you're buying and selling. You've got the same disclosure requirements for leasing properties. The new absolutely required without question, doesn't matter if the house is 1 week old or 100 years old, or if it's on the third floor of a triplex or a quadplex, is the flood disclosure. That's required to be signed by every landlord and every owner. Even the property managers can't sign these forms for our owners. The owners have to certify and attest to whether or not the property is in a floodplain and if it's flooded. Those are things that have evolved over the last 2 or 3 years that make a difference and allow landlords to make sure they're disclosing everything, and for tenants to know, okay, this works for me or it doesn't. But everybody knows the inventory and condition form is critical. Getting that to the landlord afterwards, after the lease is started, is critical. So if you're representing a buyer or a tenant moving in as a buyer's agent or a tenant rep agent, go ahead and get that to your client. They may end up getting it from the landlord also. Can't hurt to get it twice. There are additional forms for property managers. Sometimes there's other parking rules, landlord rules and regulations, HOA documentation and guidelines. You know, nowadays there's a new requirement in the lease. If you're in an HOA, you say it, what it is and how you go about finding out what those restrictions are. So a lot of changes have come through the pipeline in the last 60 days that are starting to take effect and are mandatory almost right now. So keep looking, keep reading.
Thank you, JMac. So I know we're going to start taking questions here in a minute. I'm not sure if JMac or Teresa are going to help us kind of pick some through and throw them out and answer some, but I'm going to go one more slide for just a minute and then just keep adding questions so we can see them. Thank you. To me, whether you're doing just listing as an agent or property management, there is just, and it's imperative. You have to have good systems. You have to have good checklists, communication and setting expectations. you just can't really live without them, or it's going to go very, very poorly. We all know in this industry, it's very dynamic. It's huge. So remember, there's 3 basic areas in property management that you're dealing with consistently, deep and wide. It's the owner, the property itself, and then the tenant relations. And every one of those areas have great risk with them. I'm not sure I said it earlier, but I meant to. The #1 highest level of complaints through TREC deal with leasing. Not so much property management, but leasing. If you have to start with an owner just to get the property listed and marketed correctly, and set the price correctly, and then work with the application process, all that should be in the agent remarks, right? How do you fill out? I mean, where do they go to do the application? Can you just imagine? You can, because you've probably been there many times. You've just shown a potential tenant property for a day or two. They finally find a lease property that they're willing to do. And you're going on their word that they're a good applicant, that they have the credibility, that you've kind of searched through the properties out there on MLS, if they have a pet or not, and they're going to meet all the financial criteria to do it. But what is the criteria? Did you put it in the MLS? Did you say see criteria or good credit required? That's not criteria. What is good credit? I mean, what is case by case? We love to use simple things that get it in MLS, but it's not communicative enough. You can add a whole list of things that really better identify in a very good way that helps you, the listing agent, or helps tenants who've spent all this time looking for a property, hopefully get them qualified, get the application in, and get that property rented, which is your goal. And so don't forget how imperative it is. I mean, I don't know, have you ever tried to reach an agent that will not return a call on a lease, and you're thinking, my goodness, I'm not gonna make very much money. I've spent more on gas in the last 2 days and phone calls and trying to find properties that are going to apply. So be better at your systems, be better at your processes. And it's always good to start at the beginning. Just handwrite, got to do these 15 things. And I'll tell you, if you don't know how to do something, or you're not sure, or you've not been taught that, or whatever, go to your broker. Or if you can't do that, or that's not available to you, the manager, whatever, then keep going, because in just a little bit, we're going to share with you some great places that you can learn more, you can go deeper, you can get better systems, and they're out there. We live in them, and so we're very, very happy to say they're available. So just because it sounds scary doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it, because this is what we're doing. And so let's do it to the best of our ability. I'd rather us be the people who are trying to help improve the workmanship of what we do, than just ignoring the fact that it's not getting better. That's not going to get where we're going, I don't think. I think it's the one bite of the elephant at a time process. I also feel that way about your notes and your ability to get through the processes. Once you've gotten through the application process, and once you've gotten through the part where you've leased the property, you have to make a decision. If you're the listing agent, don't step into the property management world and start, passing out keys and collecting funds and, answering questions for the tenant or the landlord anymore. You really have to be careful with that. Make sure you're going back to your brokerage to make sure you're not crossing that line. You really don't even have to go to the brokerage to know you're crossing a line. Don't do maintenance. Don't help anybody do that kind of stuff. You are crossing a line, and the risk begins to rise drastically. So if you're interested in property management, that's another game. That's another thing. Then start processing how you can get involved and learn more about that at a very deep level. But don't just tiptoe over there. You're going to cause yourself a lot of major, really big challenges. So I just wanted to make everybody aware that good systems, good communication, and setting expectations for owners, for the property condition, and for a tenant, I don't even know. J-Mac, I would love for you to chime in, because I know you have some really good examples of some harsh situations that we've probably been in because of one of those. Except you're on mute.
There we go. Tip number one on Zoom, unmute. So that's a great point, Paula. You segue great into some of the questions that we have that are examples that we can share. You know, one of the first questions was, should the listing agent mention on a lease contract with the tenant that they are a property manager? And in the lease itself, it addresses that question specifically. Is the listing agent also acting as the property manager? And it's a yes or no. So that's in your lease. It's towards the end, but it's in the actual lease agreement itself. One of the other questions about the flood zone was, do you have to have a 500-year flood zone disclosure? The flood addendum is very specific, and it does not say 500 years. It says the 100-year floodplain, and it goes into explaining how and where you get that information. So that's TXR form 2015-2015. And another question, can the property manager, or I guess lease listing agent, ask for a copy of social security card or driver's license? The answer is yes. You may not want to on social security cards. Those can be verified. My Smart Move and the other application software programs that do this can verify these things. They line up social security numbers and aliases without having to have the physical card themselves. The driver's license is, we like to have the driver's license or any other form of picture ID, because there's starting to be a problem where people are coming to get keys. And if you've never seen the person that's on the lease as the tenant and somebody picking up the keys, don't always line up. So we've had different people show up saying that they are so-and-so. So getting a copy of a driver's license or any government issued ID can help document that from a paper trail standpoint. And Paula, jump in. You know, another question that has come in is, so many property management and listing agents deny applications after being paid the fee with, quote, no reason. How could you as the tenant's agent protect your client from that?
Yeah, really good question. And I have to say, one of the most frustrating things that we deal with on the leasing side, on the listing side, or on the tenant rep side. First of all, there should really be a process for every brokerage, and it should be a lot cleaner and clearer. Can we go out and mandate that from another brokerage who's listing it? I don't know the way to do that, but I can tell you asking really good questions as a tenant rep will help you. Unfortunately, I feel like there are some times when it's not very clearly stated. I'll give you a really good example of what we do. And it does sound a little daunting on our side, but we think it's respectful. First thing is, first application in is the first one that's going to go into the screening process. Now we do a two-step process. This is just an example. We do a two-step process. The application, now remember, we're property management. We get the application through the online screening process. So it's application, the criteria has been read, it's been agreed to, it's been signed off to, that they understand and read it. If they have questions, they can stop at any point and ask their agent, or call our office directly and ask specific questions to the listing agent to get clarity. Just in case they're concerned that they may not, meet the criteria. What if I don't meet the 3 times the rent criteria? What if my credit score is not good? We don't use words like good. We give specifics, things like that. So we actually pull that down. We review it to make sure all the documentation has been uploaded, that there's nothing weird or red flaggish in that already that might cause them a problem to not be approved. If they didn't submit everything, or we didn't get everything, we ask for it. I mean, we literally directly contact the applicant through email and we ask for it. Then the next thing is, if everything's in, and we're following all the fair housing rules, we're not looking at classifications, creeds, all that kind of stuff. We're looking for application criteria. And so if we believe they've met it in step 1, I can't tell you if somebody's lied. At that point, I might be able to tell you, as long as we've been doing it, a lot of red flags. We're going to push it back for screening, and we'll let them know your application's been back for screening. Another process that we have in-house is, if we have multiple applications, and many times we do, we tell, applicants 2 through however many, 5, 10, 15, there are multiple multiple applications, you're in the lineup. And so we'll let you know if your application comes any closer to being approved. And so we actually have a process of communication that is going out. That is a lot of work for one agent. I get that, but it is a process. And then when the screening comes back, if they've met the criteria and they're a good fit, then we talk to the landlord. Hey, we have a great applicant. We believe we're going to approve them. Any questions you have, blah, 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 blah. And we go through all that. At that point, it's like approved. Yay. We need to make sure that the other people get notified. And we do that again through email. If there's an agent, and a lot of time there is, then the agent gets that same email. Thank you for applying. We've accepted an applicant. We'll let you know if for some reason it doesn't go through, right? Because after that, the agreement still has to be signed, has to be written up, has to be signed by all parties. And then then the funds have to be transferred for that agreement to actually be pending. If they don't move in for 5 days, gosh, that's a lot of stuff. So those people who have waited patiently to get their application to the front, that's a lot of effort and energy and time. And so we respect that. Does that happen everywhere? No, it doesn't. And I'm pretty sure that that's a very nice system that everybody would like to see happen for their client, their tenant. But the truth is, you're right. There's a lot of challenges out there. Asking for information they shouldn't be passing, not communicating back, sounding as if you've kind of been pushed around a little bit. I don't know how to raise the bar. I wish we could universally raise the bar, but I don't know how. Other than doing it myself and asking you guys to continue to raise the bar as well.
Absolutely. And that's where you start making the distinction between a property manager and just being a lease listing agent. You are a conduit of information transfer, and have conversations with your owners. They need to be the ones asking when you're relaying a question that a buyer's agent asks, a tenant rep asks the listing agent goes to the owner. When you give that answer back to the buyer's agent, you're saying the owner, the landlord said. It's not your opinion. This is information you are giving directly from the owner. And it's because the owner's going to ask you questions, and sometimes they're going to ask you questions they shouldn't ask you. And that's when it's a great time to share with them, fair housing laws, what is allowed to be screened and what's not. Somebody asked, what does screening encompass? Screening encompasses a lot of things. We verify a lot of things. And if something's squirrely and we think it's squirrely, we're going to dig deeper, quite a bit deeper. And sometimes it slows the process down because something's not complete, or we're missing, you get 3 pay stubs, but there's a 1 month missing, and you realize, oh, I've got January, February, and April. Where's March? Oh, they didn't work in March. Oh, okay. So we've got a gap in employment. What's going on there? I had somebody where they moved in a 5-bedroom house, and there were 4 tenants, and they only had 1 car that was on the lease application. And we asked him, so does everybody else still have the job that's on their lease application? Yes. Well, how are they getting to their job? And then it kind of brought out the fact that, oh, 2 of them are about to go buy a car. Okay, that changes drastically what their ability to necessarily pay the rent. All of those things come into play. And when you do enough of them, you see things. Ask questions. What does screening encompass? It encompasses everything. But fair housing laws are very specific about what you can and cannot make a decision on. You can make decisions on income. You can make decisions. You cannot make a decision on race, creed, country of origin, familial status, age, sex. Those are things that cannot be, those are fair housing laws determined by the Housing and Urban Development.
So 2 things you made me think of with that question, and JMac had said to me just the other day, we actually meet in a leadership perspective through an association that we're on a board, and we'll talk about leasing. You would never tell a buyer which house to buy. That's their decision. You shouldn't be telling a landlord which tenant to choose, because that's their decision. He's going to have to live and die with that process from beginning to end with that tenant. It's a relationship. But one major thing, another thing that I was thinking about was on the changes that occurred on the application, the Texas Realtor application, it does no longer ask if you're a U.S. citizen, because you really shouldn't care if they're a U.S. citizen if they're going to be leasing. Now, do you need documentation proving they are who they are and who's going to be in that property? Yes, you do. Screening, a couple of details about screening would be criminal history, and you have to be careful. There is a lot of regulation around that now. Credibility based on their credit scores. It's not just their credit score, it's their payment behaviors. If you've got a medium to low credit score, why do these people not have credit? Because they're young and they haven't built up a lot of credit because they pay cash and they haven't bought a lot of things. That's really, really different than somebody who has charge-offs and late pays and are consistently not paying their bills. If they're not paying child support, if they're not, you get to see, you should not be getting to see the landlord if you're on the leasing side. The landlord should be able to go through that credit history. I mean, that applicant is giving approval for that landlord to see their history, not you, the landlord. So that's what we have to be really careful about. You're now carrying around way too much information that really is somebody's life and history. And so we have to be really careful about that. And by the way, if for some reason you get to see that screening report, you cannot give it to the applicant or pass it at all to anyone else. You cannot do that. That is a no-no. So anyway, I just wanted to point out a couple of things that could to cause you risk, to be really careful with what you did. Feels like we're doing a lot of things just based on how we feel or what might be a good idea, when you should really have very structured systems to keep yourself out of trouble.
Mm-hmm. And it takes time to learn these things.
It does, and you really want good mentorship, and you really want a good brokerage who's really helping you get where you need to go to make sure you're not getting in a lot of trouble. I did see a question earlier, GMAC. I'm not sure if you saw it, that said, "Are you required to give back if you have multiple applications and you've sent them all back? Are you required to answer the other people or give them their feedback?" My question would be, why is that your protocol? Why are you sending all the? I mean, if you got 5 over the weekend, you send them all in on Monday. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Wouldn't you take the first one, make sure that they're either approved or not? Because it's pretty unfair and disrespectful to someone's money. And it's a lot of money today. If you have 2 to 3 people 18 and over paying to be screened, and then if they have to go through a pet screening process and making sure they have assistant animals or not, you're talking a good chunk of money for people who are renting. I would say, I don't know the correct answer. Do you need to give it back? Is it required? I think if you were challenged, you might find out that your system would be challenged pretty harshly. So I would rethink, brokerage wise, management wise, or agent wise, what your processes are, and make sure they're a lot healthier than just throwing things back to hope you find the right one. I think it's not a great idea.
So sometimes owners and landlords want to know, what's a good tenant? Somebody that's qualified, somebody that's going to pay the rent on time, and somebody that's going to take care of your house. That's a great tenant. Those are dream tenants. It's not complicated, but it is detailed, and that's the difference. There's a lot to that.
We have developed over time lots of good pieces. I would call them pieces. I guess it's a form, but a piece. FAQs for tenants is a really good one, or for applicants. What is an ideal tenant? What is your responsibilities? It's not the lease agreement. We're not trying to rewrite the agreement. It's really just kind of layman's, ask some questions. A good one on my form says, can I use after they've been an approved applicant and they're fixing to become a tenant in our properties, I send it out. It's like, can I use my deposit for my last month's rent? No, you can't, because it says so in the lease agreement. These just the top 10 kind of keep popping up from almost everywhere. One of the other things we talk about a lot is, if you have to answer a question over and over and over, if you're going to do a lease over and over and over time, if you're going to help landlords, start to develop pieces, even if they're small, the things that you hear a lot, and communicate it by putting together content that will help you. Hey, I've got that in a format. Let me email it over to you. Or, you've got a new tenant that for your owner would be very impressed that you thought about, and you do think about this stuff. They're your questions. Put them down, figure out what the right answers are, and put a piece together that applies to making good sense and making tenancy a lot smoother for your landlord.
Mhm.
Anything
I
else?
think we'll keep asking questions. We're going to go, there's an additional portion of the presentation and the webinar that we're going to go ahead and move on next to. And then we'll get to some other questions as you keep keep putting them in the chat. They're great questions.
Yeah, thank you, J Mac. Thanks for fielding those. Tenant relations and lack of responsiveness to service requests. So again, point out the major issue here. We're talking a lot more about property management risk than leasing, because this would way be crossing the line. But just looking at the picture as an example, kind of speaking to it a little bit, this is a property where it's in the back of the house. If the HOA actually, if it's visible from the other street from behind or whatever, the HOA would have already sent probably more than one violation notice or had it cleaned up, possibly depending on the neighborhood. Or if it's in the city of Houston or any rural area, it just causes lots and lots of problems. One of my favorite things about properties and tenant relations is being responsive. Is it a little bit challenging for a property manager? Yes, because sometimes you'll have tenants who have the personality of I'm going to call about everything. But listen, I'd rather have a tenant who gets in a property who has concerns about health and safety and will bring it up, or sees a small something and brings it up. We can talk about that. I mean, we can communicate that. We'll go walk a property before it gets leased, so we know what the condition is. And if you show up at a property and this is what you find before you ever put a tenant in there, there's some work to be done. But if you haven't walked a property in several months, and your tenant says, I've got a problem, then you show up or you send a vendor over and this picture comes back to you and this is what you see, there's a problem. It's not a small problem either. There's a lot of things going on in this picture. You could have violations, of course. Pests and rodents, we talk about that in the Texas lease agreement. It is a tenant's responsibility to maintain pest control, but not this kind of pest control, not rodents, not things that are being caused because of maybe damage to the property or a hole in the soffit or the fascia where they can get in the attic, or where there's rats running around or whatever. You don't think a tenant's really going to worry about termites, right? This isn't their property. So you have to think through the bigger picture. Yes, they're responsible for pests. So if a tenant sends over a request on the property management side that says, hey, what do we do about pests? The answer should probably not be it's your responsibility. It probably should be more like along the lines, hey, can you explain more what's going on, whether that's through email or through a phone conversation? You need a lot more information. What's going on over there? Did you hear, well, we heard something in the attic. Really? Well, what kind of, give me some more information. How long have you heard it? What's going on? Don't ignore challenges. They become much, much, much bigger when they're ignored. And you could see by just this picture, I mean, if these people have been here 4 months and they went through a rainy season, that's about all it takes to look like this. The door could be off, all the stuff could be grown up. There could be a whole bunch of stuff in the back that's not acceptable. And the windows could have been left open. Who knows who's living in there? Of course, there's all kinds of safety issues that can occur with just lack of maintenance on a tenant's responsibility side or the property side, management side. J-Mac?
Yeah, so property management risks. As a property manager, you're responsible for the care, being aware of the condition of the home during the occupancy of the tenants and during the tenancy timeline. That's why putting eyes, ears, and noses on a property while the tenant is in the property is a big deal. It's your job to let the landlord know, hey, I'm doing my job that you've paid me to do, is to make sure that things are where they're supposed to be. If there's a problem, we deal with it. If there's not, then you have a great report back and you let the tenants know if there's a problem and we address it. We just had, Snowmageddon and all the pipes freezing created a lot of concerns and a lot of health and habitation, insurance claims, lawsuits, tenants being displaced in a natural disaster. that was real. What do you do? It's even, right now, some of the concerns are with supply chain issues with appliances, refrigerators and stoves. You can't get parts. We had a refrigerator that went out on a part. The part was $84. It was 3 months in waiting to get one. Well, the tenant can't go 3 months without a fridge. So as an owner, as a landlord, as a property manager, you have to take that to the landlord and say, hey, we got to figure something out. And these are some of the risks that we're in right now. And you have to be fair. You need to be fair and honest. And right now, people understand some things. Sometimes they don't. But most of the time, tenants understand as long as you explain to them what's going on. Hey, these are the struggles we're having. This is why we don't have the perfect answer for you right now. We're still working hard on it. So, habitation, habitability are major concerns as a property manager that you take very, very, very seriously. And you need to explain, if you're leasing the property as a listing agent only, that you make sure that your owner that you're handing the house over, that's going to be managing their own properties, that they know that too. This is not something to mess around with. And we're in a humid climate where things can grow quickly if people aren't paying attention. So, and that includes, when the AC system backs up in the spring because there's algae in the line and it overflows and nobody gets it clean, you got to get the plumber out there. So, there's just many, many things. Another shameless plug, we're going to get to it later, but National Association of Residential Property Managers. This is what we talk about. We geek out on these kind of things. So this webinar today, we do it, probably talk to Paula 15 to 20 hours a year, just Paula, about these things. And it's fun to talk about them and share stories about learning, just like you would on a transactional side. You talk to colleagues, you reach out, you have questions. So we're here to help. And Paula's going to share some more with us about the next slide, the next picture.
Awesome. Thank you, DMAC. So I saw there's been a couple of questions about, hey, checklists and processes and stuff, but those are really particularly specific to your brokerage or to your property management company. And I think the reason why we keep plugging HAR, but mostly NARPM as Residential Property Management Association, is because these are the things that we spend that kind of quality time on. When you talk about putting together a system or a checklist or a thing, yeah, I would love to be able to offer it all. And there are people that will say, hey, go to my thing and just download them all. And you can. And I, as a property manager, I personally have done that over the years, because we are not in the business to hoard everything that we've learned. We're actually here to help everybody get better. Raise the bar has been our big deal. Raise the bar, raise the bar. So we would love to do that to you. This just isn't the platform. It's a webinar. It's super short, but as you get more plugged in and get more involved with the deeper training, you're going to find that we're more than well. I mean, we'd love to help you with those kinds of things. Seek us out, come to the association things, or find us outside of this. We would love to help you with that. Okay, lack of property reviews and accountability. We've talked so much about systems and communications and just processes, and it is a big deal. Things happen even when you're looking. So when you're not looking, expect a double down at best. Many, many times, if you're going to be managing 10 to 100 properties, the dynamics change every time there's additional properties that come up. You think you have your system set, you think you have a great organization, and it works for that period of time or that amount of properties. You go to another level and that your world begins to expand and change. You need more vendors, you need more systems, you need to tweak your systems. You might need a bigger system, you might need more people. Mostly you probably need more people. But when it comes to not doing your job, not following through with what you're supposed to be doing, your company or your format of property management might be very boutique. It might be, I can manage these, and after I get outside of this, I'm going to blow up. Well, don't blow up. Remember, there's help out there for you, but don't also try to go bite the animal. If you really have that sinking feeling, okay, I could take on 10 more properties, or I could take on 30 more properties. Can you take on 30 more properties? Is that realistic for you? And I'm really trying to point out things that are good. Growth is great. It really is. But don't try to do it by yourself. And also don't do it if you're not ready. You can ease into it. You can see it coming. But if you can't prep yourself for it, just be really careful. Your risks are going to rise at that level too. These things really do happen, and that's sort of what one might look like after an eviction, that people have left a bunch of stuff. Abandonment of properties, it happens. Somebody was supposed to be at a property through the end of the year, and all of a sudden you haven't walked the property. They stopped paying their rent in November, and you're like, these people are never late, or they're usually late. You know, it's the 15th. What's the deal? If your system, you didn't have a system in place to either do a drive-by. I mean, you could have a really good system. Okay, if I don't get paid by the 7th, I'm calling that tenant. Or, you know, if I didn't hear anything from them on the 10th after I've called, I'm driving the property. I gotta figure out, is it abandoned? I mean, what's going on? Is there a challenge over there? Just in Houston, we've had the biggest nightmares, and y'all have seen them on the news if you watch the news at that level. We hear them all the time. There's a drug raid. Somebody's died. There's been a shooting. I mean, there's things. And then we just heard at our last chapter meeting, JMAC had a great property manager who came in, and in his years of experience said, you know, hey, I was watching the news, and one of my streets was named at a death, a shooting with a death. And he said, my heart stopped because I got a property on that street. And guess what? It was his property. So it happens. We'd like to believe it's few and far between. We have had 4 deaths so far in property management, different properties, different reasons, all natural. But what is the process? Gotta have one. Gotta have one. There's also one of my favorite things that we say after we've before, during, and after. We put it in our application process. We will not change occupants or animals during the term of the lease. We will not add occupants or animals during the term of the lease. And we say it again. And you know what? When we really approve a tenant, I end up calling every single tenant. I know that sounds redundantly whatever large, but either myself or a property manager, somebody is going to call every single new tenant, and they're going to say, hey, just want to review, making sure we're all clear. I have down that the occupants are boom, 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 and boom. Is that right? So, and then they answer. You can hear a lot of things when you communicate, a lot of things. And so if for some reason you hear a well or an you better pause too, right? And so also the next thing, and then we put down that you have no animals. You have down on your application that you have no animals. This is before I say you've been approved. They will say, would it be okay if we add a cat next week? Yeah, no, we can't add any animals after the thing. So did you already plan to have an animal, and you just were thinking? So you really, it's important. These are big things, and they're going to affect. It costs when people put animals in. 1 cat. I'm not kidding you. And I'm not a cat hater. Love cats. I'm all good with it. I'm just saying 1 cat, one, with cat trees and kitty litter boxes, and them hiding them from the world, thinking they're going to do okay, and then fleas. $1,200 not too long ago. $1,200 is what it cost the landlord. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And what are they going to do? They've reached the lease. They're going to skip town. And now we have a bigger mess. So anyway, I'm just saying it's really important that you know your properties and you're reviewing your properties. And the cost of an eviction is very, very high. So really the front end, that's why we packed it with leasing first, is because it's going to affect a lot of things. I think I'll stop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's true. So best practices. We've talked about systems and processes. You know, you can think of leasing and property management similar to doing a transaction for buying or selling. You've got your systems, you've got your processes and what to do. Accountability. The lease and the property management agreement are accountable to both sides. Everybody that signs it's accountable to each other for certain parts. Ongoing education, important. So HAR's got 47,000 members of HAR. I think we had about 150 sign up for this class. This webinar. that's awesome. You know, you guys get a gold star and a trophy for participation. But it makes a difference. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Get experience. You know, everybody's like, I can't get experience because nobody will hire me. Nobody's going to hire me because I don't have experience. Somebody will, but be honest with them. Tell them what you do and you don't know. And you'd be surprised how many people are like, they want to be able to help you go through the process. And sometimes it may be a landlord or an owner who doesn't mind sharing their experience because they've already done it and they're happy to let you do it. Find somebody, find HAR education, come to National Association of Residential Property Managers meetings. We're about to talk about that next. Read, read, read. I love, this is my favorite word. I have to tell my kids, when you start reading, start at the top of the page, in the top left corner. Do not start in the middle of the page. Read agent remarks. Usually the answers are in agent remarks and or in the document section in the MLS. You know, it drives me bananas when I get a text message from an agent saying, hey, what's the application fee? The answer you're going to get from me is read the MLS. There's a lot of information that we need to put in MLSs in the agent remarks that are there to guide people to do their job the best way they know how to do it. So it goes both ways. Back to don't try and do it alone. Stay connected to industry leaders and those that have been there and done that. There's a lot of people that want to share their experiences. And most of the time, the best stories are the failures and the things you learn the most from. It's amazing how, you know, we'll share a story at the NARPA meeting, and people are like, yep, had that happen 3 years ago. This is what we did. This is who I'd call. We have experience in that particular area. Thank you so much. I'm not beating my head against the wall trying to figure it out by myself, and I shouldn't figure it out by myself. So NARPM is a very valuable process, but you know your best practices, document everything, get it in writing, have a paper trail, and be able to have it saved and backed up that you know where it is and you have an answer to these questions. So best practices, read agent remarks, agent remarks, agent remarks.
So it's just amazing because we've been doing a journey together here at HAR and the Houston market for many years. And JMAC and I see each other a lot at leadership events at HAR and also through National Association of Residential Property Management. And I have to say, when you have those kinds of relationships where I can pick up the phone, and it is no exaggeration, you can't pick up the phone or expect to be able to pick up the phone and call someone who's an industry leader unless you have a relationship with them, right? And that's a different level of ability right there. And we have huddles and we have networking things and we go to conferences, and it's just great. It's familiar territory. It makes you feel better about how hard life can be sometimes, knowing that you have those kinds of people in your corner. And they're going to also help you get out of a corner if you need to. They're going to go through their group of people that maybe you don't know and try to help you. It's like 4 eyes are better than 2, 6 are better than 4. I mean, we could just keep going. So I think that really leads us into what we have available to us. If you're not plugged into HAR at a higher level in the training section or in the leadership, it's amazing. Risk management, subcommittees, just great things that you should get involved in for your own business. It's going to elevate you as an agent, but it's also going to elevate your ability to produce and to earn more money. I mean, not everybody, might not be everybody's perfect reason for why they do what they do. But if you were doing it for free, I don't know that might be just this might be your hobby, but for me, it's my way of life. And so I really appreciate HAR and what they bring. So here are some of the things that we promised, some things that you can go much deeper in. Texas Residential Leasing Specialist, it's a designation, it's state level. JMAC and I both have this one. It's a 2-day course, and it covers the things that we've been talking about here, but in big format. It's like details of the leasing agreement, the addenda, why you need them, when you need them. I saw somebody say earlier in the chat, is the bed bug addendum required? it is if the listing agent or the landlord requires it to be part of the agreement. It's required. Is it required across the state? No. But if you're going to be a better agent, if you're going to raise the bar, why would you not include it? Because for your tenant, it's protection. If you're a landlord, it's protection. So pay attention to what the forms are. And I think it was a great question. But anyway, it also follows the lease, the essentials, the property management and issues, marketing and leasing. Man, big stuff. 2 days. Get plugged in. They don't come around as often either, so that's really important. The 3-day course, the TRPM, if you're doing property management, you have to have the TRLS to get it. JMAC has this one, right, JMAC?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. And so it's another level, and just like the TRLS, it's going to take you in levels that you really, really need. So designations are good, but you gotta use the information. It's not just about the letters, right? It's about what you gained from it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So shameless plug, not shameless at all. NARPMHouston.com. We meet on the third Thursdays of each month. We take off the months for national conferences and broker owner conferences, but it's a chance to meet new people that are in the business that may geographically be close to you. So if you've got people that are in Baytown and you've got, okay, the city of Baytown just did X. Those are real concerns and questions, and being able to have somebody that's in an area that has that's like, oh yeah, we talked to so-and-so about that. We know we've dug into that. So just recently, well, not recently, it's been on the books for a while, but the Environmental Protection Agency updated their requirements for certification for restore, repair, and paint in properties prior to 1978. Now, if you're doing property management and you're coordinating the repairs and the vendors and overseeing the work that they do, you now have to be certified RRP with the Environmental Protection Agency. Whether you're just scheduling the appointment, you don't actually have to do the work. You being able to, the overseer of it, just making sure it was done, is when we learned about this, and we had a conversation about it in NARPM, and Paula shared with us for about 20 minutes one day the beginnings of what this was about and where it's going. So the information is out there. The NARPM or national NARPM.org sends out information. There's connection points. We'd love to come see you, or we'd love for y'all to come see us and come to the meeting. Willie G's is pretty cool. There are vendors that are there. Many of the vendors that I have that I use every day are people that I met through NARPM in Houston, because they know what I as a property manager need, and that every single exit door in our property has to have a keyhole. Every door's got to have a deadbolt, a privacy deadbolt. They know these things, that what the landlord tenant laws are. And there's a big difference, and those that do and those that don't. And there are plenty of vendors that don't know those things. They don't have to necessarily do them for what they do for how they model their business. But our next meeting is September 15th. Love to see you. And then there's a conference in San Antonio, September 20th, 21st, 22nd. And on the 19th is there's a certification for the EPA RRC class on the 19th, an 8-hour class, which you have to have also. So lots of good information, lots of industry experience in the room.
So great. JMAC, somebody had posted a question. Do they have to be a member to come to a meeting?
No, not at all. No, not at all. So you do not have to be a member of NARPM, but the meeting is a luncheon, and you'll pay the non-member price, just like you do with HAR and continuing education. You don't have to be an HAR member to do a continuing education class or to take a class, but you may have a non-member price.
And if you decide to ever become a member of NARPM after you think about it and look at it, it's a national association, so you're a national member. We're the local chapter here, so there's lots of other chapters in the state of Texas. And then the conference, of course, is the state conference, which is really, really just amazing. The networking that you get to do there is just dynamically great. So anyway, hopefully that helps.
Sure. Yep. Any other questions that you guys can think of? Otherwise, we'll kind of wrap it up. I know there's always going to be more questions. This is the tip of the iceberg of information. There's a lot more out there. So.
Good. Well, I love it. We've had a great time. It's always, we love, actually, if you knew us in real person, J-Mac is hilarious. He's got 5 kids, like 10 and under or something. And he's got a car seat in every car thing. And I think he's got like 2 massive vans, and he's constantly telling bad dad jokes. So enjoy. And then I'm not much better. I have chickens and lots of grandkids. And so we're kind of cray. But we do want to leave you with something for today, the tips of the day. You'll be able to tell whose is whose. Go ahead, J-Mac.
So yeah, the tip of the day, I'm kind of the first one. Don't be a ding dong. Okay, be a professional. And I say this to myself. This is when we act like professionals to our owners, they're looking to us for professional advice. When we're working with other agents and brokers and potential tenants and vendors and clients, don't be a ding dong. Be a professional.
Great tip. I'm going to process that all day today. And then mine, of course, is no matter what you got out of today, if you just got one great tip that that's going to help change your world and reduce your risk and make life better, start today. It takes a while to develop a really good habit, so just start today. I'll share one of mine. The tip that I recently did is, it's a timer. Yes, it looks like a pumpkin, but it's a timer. It's an egg stinking timer. And I use it because there are times where I need some block time. I got to get a project out, and I'll turn it on. And if it's whatever my time is, 15 minutes, when I'm done, I'm done. And that has helped me be a lot more efficient in my management. And that's taken me a while to figure out. I mean, it's just something silly, but it has changed my world. So anyway, start today. Thank you for attending. Thank you for Teresa for having J-Mac and I. We really had a great time.
Thank
And
you,
remember,
guys.
we all started out not knowing anything.
That's right.
So don't feel bad if you're like overwhelmed. We are too.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, J-Mac and Paula, for all that great information. We have a lot of good feedback, and everybody appreciated all of the advice and the information that you gave to everyone today. I just wanted to remind everybody that we have another in-person event coming up on September 28th. And I put it in the chat. This program is going to be centered around potential forces and challenges impacting the industry. And one of the topics is going to include understanding the shift to rental. So we have a keynote speaker on that specific topic. So if you go to har.com/go/mcentral, I'll put that in the chat again. You can get more information and register for that in-person event. But that is all I have today. Thank you again, J-Mac and Paula, and everyone have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye.